Janet, Madonna, Celine, Whitney, Kylie, Mariah, Spice Girls, Robin, Britney, Christina, Jennifer, Pink, Gwen, Shakira, Beyonce, Ree, Katy, Alicia, Adele, Gaga, Taylor, Miley, Nicki, Ari all ran pop as big pop girls. They were loud, they were colorful, they were camp, they were unapologetic, they were controversial, they were everything a big pop girl should be. We were all so happy that day. It's actually even hard to imagine how terrible things would soon become. Since then, the music industry has been in a big pop girl drought. As our camp Hall of Fame pop girls faded into the background, a new anti-pop girl fell into favor, which was the opposite of everything that we were used to. They were somber, they were serious, angsty, and what the genre of pop was originated in, being popular music, started to fall out of favor. Genres elsewhere came to take precedence over pop. Trap, country, Latin, dance music all became the most commercially viable. The few pop artists who were seeing success on the charts were mainly from songs which were hybrid between pop and one of those other genres. It seemed that the idea of a big pop girl at the top of the charts and dominating the cultural conversation was perhaps a thing of the past, and maybe the genre of pop was really dead. That was until 2024. 2024 has not only been one of the busiest years for music, but more specifically, the busiest year for pop since at least over a decade. I would say personally it's been the busiest and best year for pop since 2011. 2011, of course, being the year we saw Lady Gaga's Born This Way era. Rihanna had every girl dyeing her hair red and every man wearing her face on a t-shirt with some chinos during Loud. Adele's juggernaut record-breaking year of 21. Britney's return with her Femme Fatale era. Nicki burst out onto the scene with Super Bass. Christina and J-Lo all had some of the biggest songs of the year, while Kesha had the biggest song of the year with TikTok, and Katy Perry rounded off her momentous pop girl era of Teenage Dream. And we saw something similar this year. With so many pop girls coming back, it seemed that our holy mothers were coming back down to earth to save the genre. Except for it wasn't them who saved the genre. The previous generation of pop girls were mowed over in the cultural conversation with a whole new batch of pop girls. This new batch of girls would be here to combat the anti-pop template that the genre has seen breakout stars root themselves in for over the past 5 years. So what is it about 2024 that made pop pop again? And who should we be tuning into? As always, click subscribe. I have made a Spotify playlist including every single song that is featured in this video for you to stream for your ears, which will be linked down below. Let's get into the video! This is going to be a brief whistle-stop tour on where pop was heading into the year of 2024. Before this year, it was increasingly difficult for major label pop girls to have a breakthrough moment. Not only was it hard for them to find a hit, but it was even harder once they got that hit to build on it with a successful album run and a long-sustained career. Other genres had faced this issue for ages. There was many tales of time during the 2000s of R&B fans being annoyed at artists, quote-unquote, crossing over towards a more poppier sound. But the genre of pop has always been protected by it. It was the popular genre. And with pop falling out of favor coming into this decade, it was the first time that pop girls were having to manage the quote-unquote crossing over that all the other genres have always had to do. There's also been a huge decline of traditional mass media. With the rise of streaming services, there are far, far less people tuning into the radio, and in last year's VMAs, which was months prior to this year beginning, less than 1 million people tuned in live to watch it. Everything that record labels knew over the past 30 to 40 years on how to break a pop star into the mass media, all of that had literally been removed from under their feet. These traditional formats that they would use to channel their new artists through had lost their eyes and their powers. With the rise of TikTok taking over the traditional mass media routes, a lot of major labels turned towards TikTok in order to break their new stars. So a lot of their music specifically pandered to that. And for a while, it kind of worked. However, as the app has grown, TikTok has splintered out into multiple different spaces depending on your niche and interests and hobbies. And it's no longer as simple as it was at the start of the decade as paying Charli D'Amelio a couple £10,000 to do a dance to it, and all of a sudden your song is on the chart. On top of that, once the song reached the charts, there was no third space media there such as Top of the Pops or Smash Hits magazine, or even really radio interviews in order to keep the momentum going. So while they cracked the code on how to get a hit out of a pop girl, it was impossible to sustain that as a career. In order to build these artists to have their personality on show and build a fan base, the artists have sort of, as Perry Edwards said recently in an interview with Fern Cotton, become a content creator first and an artist second.
People are like, promote yourself more. On what, babes? On what? Tell me TVs that are out at the minute, because the whole majority of the year, there's none. So I'm like, promote myself where? Like on TikTok 24/7 and Instagram and socials.
The labels have money to push the music, but what money can't buy is that fan base to buy into your career. And when you think about some of the most traditional big pop girls, it's hard to imagine them debuting in this decade. Like, could you imagine Beyonce, who is notorious for being inaccessible to the public and not letting many people into her private life, having success in a field which is completely dominated by content. In 2023, Billboard's Elias Light said that a healthier music industry would be ideas around sustainability. The industry model is basically formed of going to a casino, taking 100 bets, and relying on that at least 2 of those 100 bets are going to take off and make you a load of money, and the other 98 can be discarded and scrapped, and that doesn't matter because the 2 who did has made you all your money back. The industry makes so much money off the small amount of people who actually make it very big, and it leaves those in that sort of middle-class pop tier to be shafted and dropped from labels instead of allowing them to grow at a smaller rate. Elias Light basically said that the values of pop stardom needed to change in order for pop to fall back into favor. And this year it did. We've seen some of the biggest breakout stars and breakout hits come from artists who have been doing this for years and been able to hone in on their sound and image. Charli, Chappell, Sabrina, Tinashe, Tate, Zach Bryan, Shabuzi, Benson Boone, Madison Beer, Doechii, Noah Kahan, they have all been around for years prior to their breakout year. Building your audience before you have a breakout moment is what changed for pop this year. And that launching a pop star like back in the heyday with a Britney Baby One More Time breakout era is next to nigh impossible unless your name is Olivia Rodrigo nowadays. I think also pop falling out of the general public's interest brought back a lot more disdain to the genre of pop. Back in the 2000s, a word arrived called poptimism, and that is the idea that in music critical discourse, pop music should be taken seriously and considered serious works of art just like every other genre. Created as a response to rockism, which is the same idea as poptimism, but just obviously rooted in the genre of rock. An article by Khalifa Sana in the New York Times was one of the first articles about poptimism, but didn't actually use the words poptimism. It was just more rallying against rockism and that pop music should be considered an art the same way that rock was now being considered. And the original discourse around poptimism also included the genres of rap, hip hop, and R&B. The term came mainly to use around 2005/2006, and it's not saying that all pop music is good. It's saying that all pop music, or rather every genre, is worthy of critical evaluation and should not be dismissed. So this was all happening during the 2000s when pop wasn't being taken seriously. Pitchfork, whether you yourself want to take it as a credible source, is quote-unquote a credible source, and they never viewed pop as serious. They reviewed a Kylie Minogue album in 2002, but only as an April Fool's joke, and they did not review a single Taylor Swift album until Reputation. Some of the early pop works which got taken seriously were Robyn's self-titled album, Justin Timberlake's Future Sex Love Sounds, and Kelly Clarkson's Since You've Been Gone. And even when you got into the pop renaissance in the early 2010s, pop wasn't being taken seriously as an entire genre. There were specific artists, which would be, but as a genre, it was still mostly dismissed. Katy Perry's Teenage Dream, which is now known as one of the greatest pop albums of the 21st century and has 7 singles top the charts, at the time was totally dismissed. And after the meteoric breakout of Lord's Pure Heroine album, the pop landscape would once again shift towards this moody sort of anti-pop hero that could be taken seriously by critics. Lana Del Rey, Billie Eilish, Olivia Rodrigo can all be examples of people who took inspiration from this. And instead of pop dominating the charts, pop was dominating a more niche space in the music industry, mainly infiltrated by LGBTQ plus people. The likes of Carly Rae Jepsen or hyperpop with Charli XCX and Sophie was really where people were looking to get their pop fix, but you wouldn't find them on the charts. Those who were seeing success on the charts with pop genre were not necessarily quote-unquote traditional pop and were more pop-infused songs, such as Latin pop songs like Camila Cabello's Havana, country pop songs like Lil Nas X's Old Town Road, or more of a rap cadence like Doja Cat's Say So. So why has the genre of pop now been viewed as okay? I hate to admit it, but I think we have to thank Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift has brought back monoculture, which in a pop culture aspect is a concept in popular culture studies in which facets of popular culture are experienced by everyone at once, either globally or nationally. Critics have often dismissed the idea of monoculture ever since the rise of streaming services in music and streaming services in television and film have risen, as it sort of allowed anyone to do anything at any time and how they wanted, and also gave them far wider access to so many different artists and shows that weren't there previously. But I think with how humongous Taylor Swift has become and how much the Eras Tour is just taken over, it's kind of impossible to not say that that's monoculture. You see all these Swifties gather around one specific person that we haven't seen for years. We also have seen, with the rise of the Eras Tour, Taylor Swift be able to co-sign so many artists through her allowing artists to come and support her on her tour. And that helps for 2 reasons. Number 1, I mean, she's the biggest pop star on the planet. There's really no better marketing ever, to be honest. And number 2, there seems to be a current fixation of being ahead of the curve and wanting to be there first, particularly particularly with the rise of fandoms in social media. Fans are often looked down upon the later that they come into the community. And the rise of online fandom communities have become so important. There was a Billboard article that recently came out that revealed, instead of now paying influencers to make online content about their musical artists, they are paying fan pages within their own community, because not only is it cheaper, and a lot of the time they'll do it just for some free concert tickets, it's that it also comes across so much more genuine, because this person is a genuine fan of the artist. And in that way, when the right moment finally comes along and they get a viral moment, the conversation is not a, oh, who is this? The conversation is more of a, oh shit, everyone knows this other than me. The fact that my lighting just went dark as I was about to speak about this specific topic, foreshadowing. The world's going through a little bit of a crisis. Leading up to 2024 and throughout 2024, we have seen the fallout of the pandemic. There has been a political change for the worse. There's a cost of living crisis, and just genuinely all over the fucking globe, awful events are happening every day. In 2008 in America, during the greatest economic downturn since the Great Depression, there was an era of quote unquote recession pop. It caused a whole new wave of artists to come out and make upbeat songs, which people can find solace in, such as the biggest song of 2009, which was the Black Eyed Peas' Boom Boom Pow. On release of that song, will.i.am said, times are really hard for a lot of people, and you want to give them escape, and you want to make them feel good about life, especially during these low points. In a funny, contradictory way, people look towards happier, lighter, upbeat songs during darker times in the world. But that leads us to the year of 2024, so we should probably speak about the music release. This year already showed that it was going to be a promising year for pop music when the two undisputably greatest pop stars of the 21st century dropped massive projects. And I say undisputably because at the time of filming, Billboard are counting down the top 25 greatest pop stars of the 21st century. 1 and 2 are Beyonce and Taylor Swift. But that's not what this video is about. Please, I cannot get onto this topic. Beyonce dropped Cowboy Carter in March, and while it is not specifically pop music, it is still classified in the conversation because the conversation is about big pop girls, which Beyonce is, and the sound of country has definitely infused through into pop music in recent years, specifically this year. The album went #1, as did the lead single Texas Hold'em, which not only proves her legacy, but also her longevity in this industry. Following Cowboy Carter, Taylor Swift released the Tortured Poets Department in April, and to take up all 10 spots on the Billboard Hot 100. These two huge, momentous releases would be enough to solidify, oh yeah, pop's kind of back, guys, right? But it didn't stop there. 2010 pop princesses Ariana, Lady Gaga, and Katy Perry all made their much anticipated comeback to music this year to a varying degree of success. But it wasn't only the big hitters in the Hall of Fame who made a return. Kesha, Bruno Mars, Halsey, Justin Timberlake, Casey Musgraves, Post Malone, Eminem, and Usher all released new music, with the latter headlining the Super Bowl. Billie Eilish had a huge year with her album Hit Me Hard and Soft. Olivia Rodrigo released the extended version of Guts. Dua Lipa's Radical Optimism. SZA released Saturn. Doja Cat released an extended version of the album Scarlet. Oh, and Camila Cabello. We'll get on to her.
The girls are wet tonight. Sorry.
Safe to say it's definitely been a busy year for the genre of pop and big pop girls, and we have to thank the ladies of 2010s to come back and save the genre of pop and put it back on the map. Except that it literally wasn't to them. 2024 saw an entire new wave of pop artists not only dominate the charts, but become the face of the music industry. A new wave of stars has been all the talk and have completely eclipsed all of these huge momentous pop stars making a comeback. Addison Rae, Ama Ray, Biba Doobie, Benson Boone, Chappell Roan, Charli XCX, Conan Gray, Dasha, Doechii, FKA Twigs, Flo Milli, Gigi Perez, Glorilla, Gracie Abrams, Griff, Ice Spice, Jade, Jelly Roll, Jenny, Jessie Murph, Cat's Eye, Lisa, Lola Young, Madison Beer, Money Long, Miles Smith, Normani, Olivia Dean, Pink Panthers, Rachel Chinariri, Ray, Rosé, Sabrina Carpenter, Sexy Red, Shabuzi, Shy Girl, Tate McRae, Teddy Swims, Thames, Tinashe, Tommy Richmond, Tuvalu, Troye Sivan, and Tyla all released music this year and have either at least been a part of the charts or been a part at a larger conversation being had about the current landscape of music. And bar a couple, these artists were not necessarily on anyone's major radar, and what their releases have done has created a new buzz and conversation around the genre of pop and what the future could be. It seems to me like a huge turning point and a hint towards what the rest of the decade could sound like, with these artists leading the way and creating new stars instead of relying on the old ones for hits. It's been a busy year. I mean, all you have to do is look at the Grammy nominations being dominated by pop girls, with Beyonce leading with 11, Billie and Charli are on 7 nominations, and Taylor, Chappell, and Sabrina are with 6, with 6 out of the 8 albums nominated for the biggest category, Album of the Year, being from big pop girls. And with all this new exciting talent finally breaking through, it seems that the second half of the decade is going to be shaping up for a pop renaissance. And with so many many artists in the conversation, I feel like the easiest way to map this out is sort of like a Mount Rushmore, who I think, in my personal opinion, the 4 main spearheads are going to be in the second half of the decade. Also, as this is a conversation about big pop girls, none of the men I mentioned will be in the conversation. Although I would really like to put a case forward for Benson Boone, I shall resist. Thesis, my brief going into this, was based off of 4 main points of what makes a pop star and what makes them valid to be entered into the big 4. Because it is very easy to just pull up stats and go, well, these are the 4 biggest selling artists, so surely it's them. But I believe being a pop girl is so much more than that. So here are the 4 points that I took into consideration. Number 1, commercial success. I know I just said it's not everything, but to be a big pop girl, it is important that you have at least somewhat commercial success, at least featuring in the charts. You've got to kind of be on your way to becoming a household name. Moving on from commercial success, number 2 is personality. There are so many artists who have been able to find commercial success, but not been able to capitalize on it because they're faceless to their music. Obviously hard to sell your personality through serious singing, which is why we see a lot of ballad singers end up falling off. But Adele has managed to remain so well in the conversation, to me, not only because the music's great, but because she's got such a lovable personality and that sort of juxtaposition between her singing voice and then when she opens her mouth.
3 weeks and 1 day clean of cigarettes, not heroin or something.
It makes you just love her even more and buy into her as a person. Other examples include nonchalant, cool girl energy like Rihanna, girl next door like Britney, bonkers like Gaga, or bitch, where's my cookie like Ariana. For a fan to get fully invested into you, there's got to be another hook somewhere within you. Third category is there needs to be somewhat of a brand. And no, I don't mean you've got to start up an Avon shop like Fenty Beauty or House of Labs. You need to have a recognizable brand, a sense of identity. Some examples I included was like Rihanna's red hair in the Loud era, or Katy Perry's bubblegum sort of aesthetic during Teenage Dream. But it's really not as simple as that, where it's a specific sound of your music no one else has, or it's a red carpet silhouette or outfit style that you become known for, color grading in a music video, whatever it is. You can think of Kesha's brand being like party girl, and that's why that whole era of Kesha was so successful. And then you saw so many other artists try to recreate Kesha's party girl aesthetic. For a big pop girl, it is so important that someone can look at something and go, oh, that's so X. And my final point, which kind of encompasses all 3 together and is the most important point, is that you must be in the cultural conversation. All very well releasing music and it doing well, and you having a great personality, but if no one is talking about you, then you're not a presence. So whether that is through good or bad press, I mean, we all know how misogynistic the press is, red carpet appearances, festival circuits, magazine covers, late night show performances, podcast interviews, endorsements, it's so important to be seen. The best example I can think about this is Megan Thee Stallion. Many hotties, including myself, believe that this year has been Megan Thee Stallion's career peak. Yet it's not her biggest selling year by any means, nor has it been her most commercially successful for music. But when you break down her year, she received a #1 hit with Hiss during a highly topical public feud, collabed with a member of the biggest group in the world, had her own documentary on Amazon Prime, carved out a recognizable brand with herself with things like the video for Boa and the Sound of Mamushi, hosted the VMAs, had a sold-out arena tour, was one of the first artists to really endorse Kamala Harris and perform at an election rally, and she's had multiple endorsements with some of the world's biggest brands like Nike and Amazon. That to me is a big pop girl year. So those were the 4 ground rules. And I think going into this, there are 3 heavy hitters who are so obviously going to be in this sort of forum. So let's go through the 3 heavy hitters first, and then I'll talk about the thought process for the last one. But do let me know down in the comments down below who made it onto your Mount Rushmore, and we'll see if you agree with me. I'm going to start from the most likely to completely dominate the next 5 years, and then we'll work our way down. Sabrina Carpenter was first known for her role on Disney Channel's Boy Meets World, although real fans know that it was actually through a Miley Cyrus contest. And her musical career started by releasing 4 records under Hollywood Records, Disney Channel's record label. The music was very much Tweeny Bop focused, which makes sense because at the time she was on Disney Channel, but my god, some of the stuff out there is terrifying. But throughout different albums, particularly between like Singular Act 1 and 2, you could see the potential in the vocals there. She had some great songs with things like Sue Me and a fantastic Kia Off Bop on the Wow remix with Zara Larsson. Coming out of Hollywood Records, it's very easy to look towards Selena, Demi, Miley, who all had a similar trajectory, and it took them some time to rejig what they did at Hollywood Records and be able to find their own line and carve it out. And Sabrina eventually signed to Island Records, which maybe couldn't have happened at the worst of time, because just as she signed to Island Records, Olivia Rodrigo released Driver's License. And all of a sudden, just before I'm sure they were gearing up for a huge rebrand, and she not only gets dragged back into the Disney Channel category of celebrity with one of the greatest pillars of Disney pop culture, a highly publicized love triangle, she also was not coming out on top in terms of media coverage and fan favorite when it came to picking sides. It did, though, grant her first Billboard Hot 100 entry with Skin. A fantastic song. I will not hear any diss about that. After years of trying to finally capture that mainstream attention, she finally was. Just not maybe in the best way. She released her 5th studio album, Emails I Can't Send. It saw a little commotion. Mostly towards the peak of it was because I Liked a Boy, because I mean, as I just said, she received a lot of media coverage because of the love triangle, and this song was very obviously about that, with the lyrics, tell me who I am because I don't have a choice or because I liked a boy. And we also started to see this mischievous brand that she's created for herself creep through here by tweeting things like, I'm a slut. But it actually seemed like things started to fall into place for Sabrina towards the end of the Emails era. She became, as I mentioned, a very important status of Pop Girl approval, an Eras tour opener, and she started during her own tour and the Eras tour having a little moment during the shows where during her song Nonsense, she would change the outro for every venue. This was genius, and it went so viral. It was so smart because she was changing it for every single performance. So every evening she performed, you would open up social media the next morning, and if you were in the web of Sabrina Carpenter, automatically she would be coming up on your feed because there would be something new from each concert and not the traditional route of a tour, which is once it sort of debuts on its first night, it kind of dies down in popular culture. And this sort of got her very much in the cultural conversation. She was weirdly big, but not at the same time. It was sort of this like omnipresence. And Nonsense became a bit of a sleeper hit because of the outros. And there was also a slight rumor that the record label was paying Spotify to put her up onto people's auto cue. We're not going to get into that. She followed it up with an extended version of Emails I Can't Send, which featured the song Feathers, which again garnered a lot of conversation because the music video was filmed in a church. It was a great, light-hearted pop song. The seeds were planted with Nonsense and Feather, but there was no huge career guarantee. But it did at least seem that it caught her record label's attention as she started doing performances at things like the EMAs, which she wasn't previously doing. Fast forward to April 2024, and Sabrina would have her Coachella debut. On your drive over from Los Angeles to Palm Springs, there was a billboard that appeared on the road advertising Sabrina's set, which said she's gonna make you come ... to her Coachella set. See you Friday. It was slightly at the time a bit of an odd thing for such a smaller artist who was performing to have this huge billboard, but whatever. She then drops a tweet saying that she just wanted to put out a little song before Coachella, which would be the song that we now know as Espresso. Sabrina managed to take everything which the public seemed to like about the Emails I Can't Send era and stick it into one song. It had her fun, catchy wordplay, which she'd become known for. It had this sort of synthesized disco sound, which was so unbelievably catchy. And not only that, at this time of the year, Beyonce had dropped, Ariana had dropped, and Dua had dropped Houdini, so pop was being fed through the radio to the masses, but there was no humongous releases that were dominating the charts. So it allowed the public's ears to be warmed up to a pop sound, to be able to be well received, but not be pushed out due to a dominating force. Cough, cough, Miss Taylor Swift. She actually finished her Coachella set with the lines, "It's nice to see you back here on a headline," which at the time was, again, as I keep saying, her sort of playful, mischievous brand. But my God, the way she probably will be back next time when she headlines. Maybe she did manifest that. And I will never give a man credit for a woman's success. And I don't believe, obviously, that this is a part of Sabrina's success, but it's also important to know, at this time, she went public with her relationship with Barry Keoghan, and he himself was having a moment after the release of Saltburn. Obviously, dating a famous man does not guarantee you success, but when you are two rising stars dating at the same time, you're now ticking so many different boxes of people's conversations. Gracie Abrams and Paul Mescal low-key wanted some of Sabrina and Barry's nachos. Anyway, sorry, back to the song. Espresso, and also at the time Chappell Roan dropped Good Luck Babe. Them both dropping in April carved out a new sound of bubbling, exciting artists that were cool to get behind. Plus, Taylor was about to drop the Tortured Poets Department the following week after Espresso, and after supporting Taylor on the Eras tour, Espresso served as a perfect Taylor-light appetizer for the Swifties. Espresso ended up entering the chart at 7, which was not only Sabrina's highest debut, but Sabrina's highest chart entry ever, and that week her song Feather rose to number 21. And despite Tortured Poets Department obliterating the charts the following week, which saw her fall out the top 10, she survived the Taylor attack, which no one expected. The week after, Espresso ended up rising to number 4, and it eventually ended up reaching a peak of number 3 and blowing up over in the UK, spending 7 weeks at number 1. Once again, saw Sabrina's tongue-in-cheek come through. Espresso really and truly was Sabrina's ticket. It had all the qualities of an instant hit. It was catchy, it was charming, and it was so personality-filled, which was the little lane that Sabrina had been carving out. But a lot of people thought it could fizzle out quite quickly and be a one-hit wonder and a fluke. And then along came Please, Please, Please. As I mentioned earlier in the video, it is always an uphill battle for an artist after a popular song to build on it and carve out a successful album run, especially when it's your first breakthrough moment. But the 1-2 hit of Espresso to Please, Please, Please was insane. Everyone was sort of expecting Sabrina to follow up with an espresso recreation, which so many artists follow up after they have a breakthrough smash. You can think of Tate Mcrae releasing Greedy and then X's. It seems that, oh, if the public like this must be my thing, so let me kind of recreate it in a slightly different way. But most times that doesn't end up working because it's like we already have the original. So when Sabrina pulled out Please Please Please, which was different to espresso. It had more of a country twang and it was a bit slower, but it wasn't totally different because her personality still came through with the lyrics, which again was carving out this specific brand for her. But people clowned her upon release, most notably the tweet that said, "I've never seen someone fumble a second single this bad." It turns out it wasn't a fumble. She ends up dethroning herself on the #1 spot on global Spotify, now maintains #1 with Please 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 and #2 with Espresso. And it was very clear that people didn't just like Espresso as a hit, they were buying into Sabrina as a person. Obviously, which follows up is an album, short and sweet. The whole album is just filled with what I've already mentioned about Sabrina, that cool, effortless, fun quality. The line readings are light and airy, her songs are wordy, to which she actually thanks Fiona Apple for the inspiration behind. But the music is mainly lighthearted, and even if there are some more serious lyrics within that, it's usually combated with some sort of pun. The lyrics are all funny, and that sort of silliness is exactly what the musical landscape was lacking in a time of especially political turmoil. Short and Sweet was filled with the silliness of songs like Nonsense and Feather on Emails I Can't Send, but lacked in elsewhere of that album. And I also think Short and Sweet shows a great versatility of Sabrina as a pop star. You've got traditional pop tracks like Bedchem, country twangs like Slim Pickin', and more R&B inspired the track In Good Graces, which I also think sounds very similar to a K-pop song, like something maybe New Jeans would release. Plus, her main collaborator on the album was Jack Antonoff, which, as I mentioned at the start of the video, is the Taylor effect. And so far, the album is already certified platinum. The entire album charted in the top 40. The album obviously went #1 on the week of its release with over 250,000 units on the first week. On the Billboard Hot 100, she now has a #1, a #2, and a #3 peaking single with the 3 lead singles. And over in the UK, she has set the record for a female artist with the most weeks at #1 in a single year. It is undeniable the commercial success Sabrina has seen this year and completely trumps anyone actually who has released music this year. I would even say Taylor. Sure, Taylor may have had all of those songs in the top 10, but in terms of a longevity and commercial success, Sabrina Carpenter, to me, has had the most successful year. And it doesn't just stop at commercial success. She has been taking over the pop culture landscape. We saw her perform a medley. For her first VMAs performance, it was a medley. Do you know how insane that is? A distinct fashion image for herself with this 60s old Hollywood glamour aesthetic. And we saw that at the VMAs as she wore a vintage Bob Mackie dress, one that was originally worn by Madonna, very passing of the torch. And we've continued to see that throughout her tour styling. She has, as I mentioned, a relationship with a current It Boy actor who also starred in her music video for Please Please Please. Plus, she bagged one of the hottest up-and-coming actresses, Jenna Ortega, in follow-up music video for Taste. The album also was surrounded in discourse about a love triangle with 2 other pop stars, Shawn Mendes and Camila Cabello. How ironic. And not to mention, she's had collaborations with Air One, and she has her own Netflix Christmas special coming out in December. It is undeniable the impact Sabrina has had on this year. And what makes it so good is that she so clearly wants this. She wants to be a pop star so badly, and she has wanted to be a pop star for ages. That sort of ambition and drive and old school hunger that is so commonly found in like those sort of early 2000s stars. The type of hunger where you'll perform anywhere and everywhere if it means that you can get your music out. I think back to Little Mix, video of Little Mix performing Black Magic. I'll make you fall in love. I truly believe Sabrina could have a future nostalgia-length era with Short and Sweet. She has a plethora of single choices in this. It is no doubt in my mind that Sabrina Carpenter will be a dominant force for the rest of this decade.
Hey, Billy, you there?
I went back and forth between 2 and 3 on who I was going to put higher, but eventually I went for Charli for reasons I'll explain. Charli XCX has had a long career prior to 2024, so she is by no means a new pop girl. I see a lot of people omitting Charli when it comes to this sort of conversation of this new class of pop girls, but to me, she very much firmly is in it. Maybe not even just so much because of who she is, but because of the impact that she is going to have on the genre over the next 5 years. As I mentioned, she's already had a career of over a decade, so it is a long slog. I am not going to sit here and speak about her career. There are many, many fantastic podcasts and YouTube videos out there going into depth about Charli's career. In an extremely quick whistle-stop tour, Charli XCX, the name coming from her MSN screen name, first appeared on the music scene via MySpace and performing at clubs at 14 years old. That buzz got her signed to Asylum Records, a subsidiary of Atlantic Records. In 2012, producer Patrick Berger sent her 2 beats. One of those would end up becoming the hit #1 song, I Love It. Charli wrote over the beat for I Love It, but she didn't actually resonate with the sound so much, so she ended up selling it to Swedish pop duo Iconopop. They snatched it up, they released it, and they still had her vocals featured on, so she was credited as an artist, which led for her breakthrough moment as the song topped the UK charts and went top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. This led to her debut album True Romance in 2013, which fared lesser commercial success, only charting at 85 on the UK album charts. However, it wasn't over for Charli yet. In 2014, she reached her then peak of her career by featuring on Iggy Azalea's Fancy, which topped the Billboard Hot 100, and she would be featured on one of the biggest films of the years, The Fault in Our Stars soundtrack, with her song Boom Clap, which would go top 10 stateside and the UK. This success was followed up by her second album Sucker, which fared a slight bit commercial success than her first, peaking at number 15 on the UK album charts, but didn't quite live up to the expectations of Fancy and Boom Clap. Her EP Vroom Vroom, with the help of her friend and producer the late Sophie, helped solidify her sound, which she'd then become known for in the 2010s in the genre of hyperpop and away from the traditional pop that saw her receive her breakthrough. 2016 and 17 saw semi-hits with After the After Party and Boys, the latter's music video starring notable male celebrities, which gained a lot of media attention. However, the intended third album, XCX World, would go on to be scrapped after it was leaked. Around this time, Charli was firmly cemented in the growing online culture of niche pop girls, heavily endorsed by an LGBTQ+ audience. Her 2 mixtapes from 2017, which reflected that, saw countless collaborations from other girls in this space like Mo, Cupcake, Alma, Caroline Polachek, Carly Rae Jepsen, Brooke Candy, Kim Petras, and Tuvalu. 2018, Charli saw medium success again with 1999 featuring Troy Sivan. Her self-titled album Charli came in 2019, 2020 album during the pandemic with How I'm Feeling Now, and in 2021 it was announced after originally being worked on pre-pandemic she was teasing her 5th studio album Crash. Crash was meant to be her attempt to break through into the pure pop mainstream music. In her own words, she described the album as pop-tastic. At this point, Charli's fanbase had grown even bigger to an almost cult-like following, and the music from this album was also far more radio-friendly. Cult fanbase mixed with more marketable music allowed for a few minor hits with Beg For You featuring Rina Sawayama and Used to Know Me. Finally, Speed Drive for the Barbie movie would land her first entry into the Billboard Hot 100 since 2014, which rounds up Charli XCX's career prior to 2024. I know I missed out a lot. All you need to know is that she's been ahead of the curve for a very long time. Her audience going into 2024 was primarily made up of gay men very smug that they knew she was a star before she was about to be a star. She began her musical year in 2024 by teasing a song which would go on to be Von Dutch on TikTok. Releasing this song at the start of 2024 was the perfect timing for it. Sorry. Not to be punny or anything. But with the song Perfect Exceeder becoming a smash after Saltburn, and this track very much had the same feel with its beat, especially with the similarities between Von Dutch and Body Rox's Yeah Yeah. I don't believe it's a sample, but similarities are undeniable. Around this time, we also got a Party Girl Boiler Room set, which garnered a lot of social media buzz and started to generate this overwhelming sense of FOMO, fear of missing out, within the Charli XCX community. Von Dutch then got a remix with A.G. Cook and Addison Rae, which again had a small viral moment around Addison's scream, and it would start off the trend of remixes on this album. Club Classic and Back to Back were released. Not much noise happened there, but fell back into favor with 360, which is a far, and I would say on the album, is the most hookier pop song. And not only was the song a lot more radio friendly, this gained a lot of conversation online because of the music video, which saw it girls like Emma Chamberlain, Alex Consani, Quen Blackwell, Gabrielle, Rachel Sennett, Richie Shazam, Julia Fox, and of course, mother to them all, Chloe Sevigny. And it was such a smart marketing move because, yes, these were all it girls, but they were niche, culturally online fanatic it girls, which is exactly the niche that Charli was in. It created this environment which would go on to follow the whole album campaign. This sort of almost cliquey idea of we're so cool and known to this specific group of people who think this is a huge deal, but now we're breaking through to the general public and the mainstream who don't really have any clue who we are. It's sort of like a game of catch up, which should come across as really daunting and almost off-putting. But because Charli is so personable and is an extremely funny individual, it almost comes off as endearing. And instead of scaring off the general public, it actually just made them want to be even more involved. As I mentioned, remixes were a thing, and it was followed with a remix from Robin and Young Lean, which I love. And at this point, the online crowd was very much tuned in. But Twitter never reciprocates what the general public thinks. I don't know how many reality TV voting shows, how many elections, how many Twitter successful artists who end up flopping in the charts needs to happen to get it through these people's skulls. There is so much of the world, specifically in America, who are unplugged from all of that shit. I said, damn, I forgot. Damn, I forgot. To someone one the other day and they looked at me like I had two heads. But at least she had the internet gagging for this album to finally be released, and it was amped up by an appearance at Primavera Festival, which caught online buzz as she played tracks from the album. Knew her core demographic going into this were chronically online, so she used that to her advantage with the marketing. She tweeted out marketing ideas that were sent to her by her quote-unquote record label. She had a burner account with 360_brat, which once again enforces this theory of it's better to be in the crowd than out. The album artwork too was genius marketing. We're so used to pop girls having thought out conceptual album artworks, and instead we got a blurry font slapped onto a shade of green. A lot of fans initially had a very negative reaction to it, which is so hilarious because looking back, it was kind of the most impactful part of this era. Charli would combat the criticism by tweeting, "I think the constant demand for access to women's bodies and faces in our album artwork is misogynistic and boring." Yeah. She then also later went on to reveal in an interview with Zane Lowe that the real reason behind it was to actually save money. I was like, I think I will do a press shoot and then maybe we just save on the album cover. Also following the backlash, Charli would then go to change all of her albums on streaming platforms to have the same as Brat, but obviously in different colors, which then turned into this huge meme. Her team worked fast and they created a Brat generator, which rushed so many fan accounts to change their profile pictures to their names on the Brat album artwork, and an internet niche meme was born. And as all internet memes happen, brands started to grab onto this free marketing tool too, because it not only was going viral, it was so easily accessible. All it was a shade of color and a font. Now, people who weren't even interested in Charli, or maybe didn't even know her music since Boom Clap, were wanting to be included in on the joke. This was then followed by the Brat wall, where an entire wall was painted green on a live stream and Charli would turn up. This shade of green quickly became synonymous to funny and cool. Even the London Eye was lit up on the shade of green on release day. The album was eventually dropped on the 7th of June. It was framed as a dance record, which it is, an album referencing herself being a niche legend, but behind it, there's a lot more emotion. Charli opens up a lot about grappling with her place within this pop industry and ecosystem. It also takes on all of the different emotions you sort of feel as you are in your 30s, of feeling too young, but also too old. The album was such a hit that a deluxe album was quickly announced, and the Brat wall was actually painted over white on a live stream, which made fans think that the era was over and it was short-lived. But little did they know, it actually meant that the extended album was coming. Brat was actually initially blocked from #1 because of Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift ended up releasing a UK-only exclusive version of Tortured Poets Department, blocked Charli from getting to #1, so she debuted at #2. And in the States, it debuted at #3, which would be her highest charting album and her highest selling first week in the US. Conversation was definitely forming, but I think at this point, Charli fans were loving it and it was definitely successful, but there was no promise that this was going to be cemented as one of the most iconic pop culture moments maybe of the decade. I think the moment it really turned into something far more serious for me personally was the Girl So Confusing remix. When the album first came out, it was obvious that Girl So Confusing was about a fellow pop girl in the industry, and many were trying to figure out who it was, pointing fingers towards Lorde, Rina Sawayama, and Marina. In following interviews after the remix was released, Charli actually revealed that she attempted to get Lorde on the Brat album for a year with little success, and then it got to the day before the album was being released, and she felt like she needed to give Lorde a heads up about the track, so she sent her a voice note to explain the song, and she was ready for Lorde to never speak to Charli again after that voice note. Instead, Lorde replied, actually suggesting a remix, and within 3 days, the remix had materialized. Upon the announcement, the following day, the song was released, and Charli posted to Instagram a screenshot of Lorde sending through the lyrics. The remix saw the singers converse with vulnerability about what it is like to be a woman not only in the music industry, but within the public eye, and saw the two girls make several public appearances after the remix was released, showing reconciliation. Girl So Confusing has already been named the best song of 2024 by The Independent, calling it a watershed moment in pop. It was a heartwarming experience for that sort of community which I mentioned of LGBTQ plus primarily people online who loved these sort of niche pop girls have this momentous pop cultural moment together. But the lyrics itself and the vulnerability was so relatable to people who didn't even know either of these two girls. All this lore behind the two made, again, old school Charli fans feel more attached to this album, but also made new fans who are just discovering Charli for the first time want to find out more. The term Brat Summer quickly caught on. And with it catching on, it turned the tide from being a gay niche joke to in every single member of Gen Z and millennials' pop culture vocabulary. It started to lose its value just a little, as any online niche joke does when Gen Zs and millennials catch on, and then all of a sudden corporate people catch on and they try and make it a thing, and it completely kills and deads the joke. Urban Outfitters did a Brat Summer edit, which is quite actually the opposite of Brat. And the Loose Woman panelists were doing the Apple dance. My God. Also, a remix of the song Guess came out with Billie Eilish, who is a mainstream pop artist. The remix debuted at 1 in the UK and 12 in the US. But all this sort of corporate world catching on to someone who's been a niche pop artist for 10 years and Billie Eilish coming on a song and it debuting at number 1 started to turn the whole Brat summer into a lame joke. And it did look for a second that it may just fizzle out, but it didn't. And instead, it just grew even bigger to the point that even my mum knows what Brat is now. At the time of filming, National Geographic has picked up on it. Brat has been deemed Word of the Year by Collins Dictionary. She has just taken over the entirety of Times Square. The album's taken number 1 spot on countless end-of-year best album lists. And after the Green Party used the Brat green shade as promotion in the UK election, Kamala Harris used it as one of her first promotional tools when she came into the running for the presidential election by changing the Kamala HQ Twitter banner to read Kamala HQ in the Brat font, prompting Charli to tweet Kamala is Brat. The whole album would then continue to be used throughout her promotional campaign in order to get young people interested. Also seen Charli become the face of H&M, Marc Jacobs, Acne Studios, and an ambassador for Valentino. It seemed every time it looked like Brat was going to slightly start to waver, Charli would firmly place her foot back on the neck of pop culture. After the success of the remixes, Charli dropped an entire remix album with features from huge artists, Bon Iver, 1975, and Ariana Grande. Allowed the album to finally go number 1 in the UK, rightly so. It would have felt so weird if that album never went number 1. And she then went to take on to the Sweat Tour with Troye Sivan, which once again kept her in the cultural conversation, with the Apple Dance Girl being a feature in every show, which caused controversial moments during it. Plus, she just double billed SNL performing and hosting. It has been a non-stop tour of dominating an entire year with marketing employees, remixes, performance, allowing Charli to completely dominate the cultural conversation. And while, yes, she is not a new pop girl, which may make some people question why she is on this list, she is definitely in new territory when it comes to her and her music, which, for the content of the lyrics on the album, is definitely very bittersweet. And I think we can look to Brat to see what a big pop girl in the 2020 landscape means. While I mentioned all these accolades, it's been the most commercial successful year for her. By no means lives up to Sabrina Carpenter's year. She's only had 4 charting singles in the US, ranging from 74, 51, 41, and 12. But she has by far the biggest culturally relevant year of any pop girl so far this decade, resulting in 7 Grammy nominations. And I do definitely think that there is an argument here after this whirlwind and the fact that the cultural conversation outshone the commercial performance, that there is an argument that Charli's career peaks here and it's only down from here. Unlike what it looks like for the other girls on this list, which looks like a rise which is going to be pretty hard to stop anytime soon. Especially with Charli saying that after Brat, she's going to take a little break from music and lean in towards more acting. However, even if she doesn't release music for the rest of the decade, I think she's so important because the impact and legacy of Brat is going to be felt for the entire rest of this decade. And we'll probably see a likely rise of more nonchalant pop stars trying to recreate this era of Charli. And there is no doubt in my mind that this is going to be spoken about as one of the most monumental moments in pop at the end of this decade. It's no surprise Chappell takes up the 3rd spot here. At 17, she was signed to Atlantic Records and ended up meeting long-term producer Dan Nigro at the age of 20, who's most well known for producing Olivia Rodrigo's biggest hits. She went on to release a few singles, but the most notable of those was Pink Pony Club, produced by Dan Nigro himself, which was released in 2020 and allowed her to find a niche fan base through it. It looked like some buzz was building, but however, due to COVID, the moment fell through the net and Atlantic ended up dropping her. After moving back to Missouri after being dropped, she decided to give music one more year. 2022 saw her release Naked in Manhattan, Phenomenon, and Casual as independent artist, and after being picked up by Island Records in 2023, she released the single Red Wine Supernova and eventually her debut album, The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess. But it wasn't until 2024 she would end up blowing, despite the fact the album came out in 2023 and the earlier song from the album she released all the way back in 2020. When the album first came out in 2003, it was by no means a commercial success, but it was a pretty solid cult classic within a niche community. The album itself is full of versatility and I think is a fantastic debut album. It showcases Chappell's vocals on tracks like Casual and Pink Pony Club to anthemic crowd pleasers like Hot to Go, Super Graphic Ultra Modern Girl, and Red Wine Supernova. The album opener, Phenomenon, Pitchfork described as a test of listeners' tolerance designed to drive away those that can't hang with the excess of it all. And that's kind of what Chappell ended up becoming. She was extroverted, she was loud with not only her music style but also also her appearance. And she created this sort of sapphic pop safe space, which was lacking within this pop girl bubble. After the release of the album, online performances started going viral. Most notably, her fantastic Tiny Desk performance gained a lot of traction, her Hot to Go performances as a supporting act on the Guts tour, and multiple festival appearances, including Gov Ball, Coachella, and ACL Music Festival, with the latter ended up pulling such a huge crowd that she had to move positions on the lineup due to the growing interest. But it wasn't until Good Luck Babe, which was released in April 2024, that she really got sent soaring. Good Luck Babe is a phenomenal pop song with 80 synths, and the lyrics, kind of like what we talked about with Sabrina, are very bratty, if you pardon the pun. Through the success of Good Luck Babe and the viral performances started to see Chappell's fanbase grow, and all of a sudden, these songs from an album over a year old started appearing on the Billboard Hot 100, which only validates the security that she has in her music, that whatever she released was so timeless that it didn't matter when people found it, it just mattered that people found it. Chappell quickly became this sort of accessible pop star in terms of material that is ready there for you to listen, but it's not a humongous, overwhelming discography, to the point that it still feels exciting getting involved in her in this quote-unquote early stages. And the speed of her train in terms of gaining traction is not as intense of a rise as the like of Sabrina Carpenter and Espresso, and is more at a pace which feels exciting to become a fan of her and root for her. I hate the Gaga and Chappell similarity conversation because I actually don't think they're that similar. But in this specific sense, I think of Gaga, where you have this huge sort of bravado persona and these amazing sort of theatrical outfits paired with still radio compatible songs with huge anthemic choruses and catchy melodies, which allows for this sort of safe space in a fandom to form, which celebrates being different but still being accepted by the mass public. I also think that the songs are meant to be listened in a crowd. They have huge choruses like Hot to Go, which explains the mass interest in her when it came to her festival performances and the clips of her going viral online. And Chappell quickly became more than a pop star, and it was almost a movement. If you're a fan of Chappell, you're a super fan. It's a religion, not the Gaga reference, but like the Monsters. She's become a sort of people's champion by representing something that is so often not represented, being a queer mainstream A-list pop star who Chappell herself considers herself to be a drag artist. Her music creates a space and environment of comfortability for those who don't have it, and to have that from a big pop girl rather than a niche artist with a specific online fandom makes you feel A, more secure in her, but also B, want to support her more rather than go against her, like many fans end up doing when an artist who was previously niche and obscure has a mainstream breakthrough. Because this is so rarely seen. A queer woman centering her music around queer woman experiences. It's so rare, if not to the level Chappell's done maybe ever. And as I mentioned, she has all these fun, creative looks, which to me, I don't know if this is an obscure reference, but if you think when an episode of Drag Race airs, there's a main challenge and then they go out on the runway. And most of the discourse surrounding the episode will end up being the outfits that these queens end up deciding to wear on the runway rather than what actually happens in the challenge itself. It creates so much more fun of a conversation when Chappell has these super fun outfits on talk shows and for performances and for festivals and red carpet award shows. It invites conversation to be had around her. She not only performed at the VMAs, but she also won the VMAs for Best New Artist. We will get onto the conversation about brand collaborations in a quick second, but she does have a contract with MAC Cosmetics, and many have deemed her to be the answer to make MAC cool again. The album has reached a peak of number 2 on the Billboard 200 albums chart, and she's now had 7 entries into the Billboard Hot 100, including the 4-year-old song Pink Pony Club reaching a peak of 26, and Good Luck Babe entering the top 5. Everything is working in tandem for Chappell. The one blip which we have seen, which is the diva controversies. Chappell has been at the center of hot topic when it comes to her attitude. This all sort of started when Chappell made a video asking fans to respect her privacy and boundaries when it comes to asking her for a picture in public, which was around the same time she had an emotional moment on stage where she sort of broke down about how fast her fame was growing, which caused a conversation about whether she is the right person to become famous. Controversies would then go on to follow her, including cancelling smaller European shows in order to rehearse for a performance at the VMAs, saying she would never sell out to do a brand deal with H&M amidst fellow big pop girl Charli currently doing a brand deal with H&M. There was a brief controversy during the election surrounding her support, or I should say lack of support, for Kamala Harris. And most recently, she commented on Billboard for reporting her changing her team, which many thought, girl, they are a music publication, they report on music news. And with all these sort of happening in the span of about 6 months, a lot of people who maybe aren't in the Chappell Roan fandom question whether this girl is suitable for fame. Some not coming from the best interest of her, but some people genuinely concerned if mentally this level of fame is something that she could handle. Many people question whether she would be better sitting in that sort of middle-class pop girl territory rather than the big girl, and perhaps that sort of hunger that we spoke about in Sabrina to be the biggest star on the planet, it may not be innately in Chappell. You know, I mean, we saw it with Sabrina. Once Espresso blew up, the second single came and the album came very, very quickly. With Charli, once the album dropped and the remix started taking off, we got more remixes and then a whole remix album. If you want to capitalize on this, it makes sense that when the wheels start going, push everything out. And the fact Chappell's not released any music as of when I record since her meteoric rise shows that she must personally be wanting to take it slow, because it's definitely not the label, because from a label point of view, this is the opposite of what they would want. For me personally, I think it's really nice to see in the growing age of pop stars having to be present on social media. We have seen this huge rise of a relatable pop star who is not out of the ordinary, is not super controversial, and instead is super humble and nice. And I think we see that take place in the case of Sabrina and Charli, whereas Chappell hasn't diluted and censored herself in order for the public to take a liking to her, and still has this bravado with everything she does. It's, again, not the Gaga comparison, but it is like how Gaga didn't do traditional pop interviews when she first broke through, and she'd often give spiky and awkward interviews just to sort of take the mic and play and have fun with it.
No, not at all. I've got 3 #1 records and I've sold almost 4 million albums worldwide.
I think nowadays in this current climate, artists are so worried about coming across ungrateful or as a diva, whereas that is kind of what the whole pop star, you know, with Christina and Mariah, Beyonce and Madonna was rooted in, was this diva persona. She's so assured of herself and her sound, and it shows with, as I mentioned, the album being good, and it was not a matter of if it was going to blow, it was just when people found it. She doesn't need to come across likable because she can't help that the music bops. But ultimately, that is why I ended up putting her third below Charli, just because I think those points still stand about not knowing if she wants it as bad as maybe some other girls want it, which is completely understandable. We have seen in real time the hideous effects that this industry can have on young female artists. If she feels precautionary about it, it makes complete sense, but that is why she comes third on my list. Sabrina, Charli, and Chappell, I'm sure you predicted were going to be on the big four. And before we get to number 4, I'm going to go through some of the other artists I considered, and also just some of the other artists who will undoubtedly play a part in this pop renaissance in the second half of the decade. Obviously, there are the sort of pop girls who rose in the first half of the decade who will be still releasing music. Olivia, Megan, Dua, Billie, Doja, but they don't really feel right to include in this sort of conversation, I guess. The only one maybe is Doja Cat. She's teasing her 5th album, and there are rumors that this album is going to be a return to her more poppy sound, like on Planet Her, which obviously saw her most commercial success. There's obviously, of course, SZA, who has been teasing Lana for God knows how long, but SZA is kind of an anomaly. She doesn't play the pop game or the music industry like all these other girls. She drops when she wants, and she'll lie about dropping when she wants too. And you just know whenever she does drop, it's gonna just be on her own terms. SZA's like the Adele to the like Dua, Olivia, Doja's, Katy, Nicki, Gaga kind of. The next category of girls are the ones who are similar to Charli prior to this year in that niche online space, particularly with the LGBTQ plus community. And if Charli's year this year is anything to judge her off, then we could probably place a bet on them. Firstly, FKA Twigs. Obviously, Sexua is coming out in the new year, and we've had the single from that, plus Perfect Strangers and Drums of Death. I think Perfect Strangers is actually a pretty good middle ground between Twigs' alternative R&B sound and what could be a commercially viable hit, so maybe it could happen. There's also Shy Girl, who has the Charli stamp of approval after supporting the Sweat Tour. I think her sort of club Shy sound definitely could be a hit, and she could definitely have a takeoff in the second half of the decade. Then elsewhere, there's sort of Rina Sawayama, Tove Lo, Rebecca Black, Arma Ray, who's just supported Sabrina on tour. All of those girls will be releasing music and could definitely have a Brat-esque takeoff. And then in a more recent way, I think Pink Panthers and Biba Doobie fit into that conversation. And over here in the UK on a similar scale, Griff and Rachel Chinariri. These girls don't have Billboard Hot 100 hits, but you know, they can easily sell out a tour. They're embraced by a powerful core fan base. And this not being embraced by a mainstream, as we've seen this year, can sometimes be an asset when it comes to your blow up, or just kind of need things to fall at the right time like they have for the girls who have had their break this year. It's just a matter of time. But it does sometimes go wrong. For example, Kim Petras last year had an espresso-sized hit with Unholy, but then followed it up with Alone with Nicki Minaj, which was a complete mess, and it saw her sort of major label breakthrough crash out and alienate her fans. But it also happens well, as we saw this year with Tinashe, who I so badly wanted to make an argument for to make the Mount Rushmore, but I think my bias would slightly be showing. Nasty was a huge hit for Tinashe, and I'm pretty sure her first Billboard Hot 100 entry for 10 years. She was on The Tonight Show, she was at the VMAs. It can happen to any of these girls, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a Brat-sized tries to happen, it can be a little moment like nasty. The next category are these artists who are bubbling a fan base, but they haven't been around and don't have the material or the size of the fan base quite yet as those other girls we just mentioned. Addison Rae, Gigi Perez, who just went #1 in the UK with Sailor Song, and Ceechyna, who's gearing up for new music. Probably the most of note of these three would be Addison. Addison released her debut single Obsessed in 2021, and no one really moved. And I can understand why. At the time, she was also starring in a Netflix documentary. She was coming out with a fragrance line. She was best friends with Kourtney Kardashian. She was still doing TikTok dances. It kind of felt like a single was the next step in a management plan of how to rinse this girl dry from money before her 15 minutes of fame is over. And it only felt more that a music attempt felt like a cash grab when no singles followed up after Obsessed didn't do much. But I think Addison came back onto people's radar when Spotify released a feature where you could compare your music taste to a celebrity, and loads of people found out Addison Rae's like one of her most listened to artists was Arca. Then a bunch of Addison's demos got leaked, including an old Lady Gaga demo, which was very popular in the monster community, called Nothing On But the Radio. This caught the attention of a lot of gay men who are chronically online, which prompted the leader of gay men who are chronically online, Charli XCX, to tweet that she was actually in the studio with Addison and she's been working with her, which led to this random cult group forming around Addison Rae, which kind of started as a joke and sarcasm and very quickly turned into seriousness, which led her to release her debut EP, AR. It features the Lady Gaga demo on, it has a feature from Charli XCX, It Could Have Been You also on that, which is a fantastic pop song, and the gay men were thoroughly tuned in. Fast forward to this year, she released her first major label single, Diet Pepsi, which was a medium-sized hit. It went #10 here in the UK and it hit into the Billboard Hot 100, followed up by Aquamarine. As I said, there's not enough material here yet to validly make an argument for her, but it definitely can happen. And then of course there's so many smaller female artists who are amazing and have so much potential. Rose Gray, Jay Stevens, Natanya, Erin LeCount, Claudia Valentina, Yaz, Xena, Clea Trapper, Adela, Shai Cartier, Cortisa Star, Isolt. There are so many endless options here and so many I didn't even name and so many that I'm not aware of yet. They were just a few of my personal favorites. Starting to also see the fallout of the girl groups who have recently disbanded or taken a break. The best bet for me personally out of these girls would be Jade from Little Mix. Her debut single, Angel of My Dreams, was not only extremely critically acclaimed, it smashed here in the UK too, peaking in the top 10. Her two follow-up singles, Midnight Cowboy and Fantasy, were fantastic as well, and for her to have already shown that much versatility in 3 singles just shows how much promise that she has. But again, not only that, she understands it. Her visuals are excellent, her concepts are great, she understands the social media and the personality of it all, and most importantly, she just seems to have taste, which is something you can't buy. We've seen Normani finally release her long-awaited 5-year debut album, Dopamine, this year, which is one of the best albums this year. Normani's an interesting case because she could so easily be at the forefront of the music industry if she wanted to be. I just don't think she wants to be, and that is completely fine. As we mentioned when it came to Chappell, we've seen what this industry can do to young females, and I don't blame her, especially with the current climate of social media scrutiny. I get nervous posting on Instagram because I don't get as many likes as I used to. Never mind 5 years of people trying to bully you into releasing an album. I can see how that would make you anxious. But Normani's already proven to us she can perform, she can get the visuals down, she is a viable pop star that you can buy into. Camila Cabello is an interesting one because she really shouldn't be in this conversation because she was up there with the likes of Ariana basically at the late 2010s as a big pop girl. Havana, Never Been the Same, Senorita, My Oh My. They're all humongous singles in her wheelhouse, and then she kind of just fell out of public favor. I think what kind of happened, which is what we're seeing is really helping the girls this year, is she didn't have that core fan base to support her, and more it was like, I guess, quote unquote locals who listen to her music. And this year it saw a controversial rebrand with her album CXOXO. People were accusing her of copying Charli XCX. When I Love It first dropped, I personally thought it was a record label going, look, you are not what this used to be in terms of sales, and rather, and I do genuinely mean this with no shade, lie in Ava Max, BB Rexa territory of featuring on big dance features to keep the money coming in. Why don't we try and simulate this niche pop girl image, which also has high monetary value due to the fan bases buying into tours and merch and different variants on vinyls and CDs and stuff. But CXOXO is a fantastic album. He Knows, June Gloom, Dade Country Dreaming are some of my favorite songs of the year. Also, we've seen 3 of the 4 Blackpink girls go solo. Rosé's had great success with Apate or APT with Bruno Mars being a top 10 hit. Jenny's released Pretty Girl Mantra, and Lisa, Rockstar, is a great song. She performed at the Victoria's Secret show. She's got a song with Rosalia. Speaking of girl groups, they're not necessarily quote unquote big pop girls, but they are in the conversation and have a nod towards Flo, who just released their debut album Access All Areas, and Cat's Eye. After that Mama performance, they have more than proved themselves to be more than some record label experimental project and something to be taken seriously. And then there's 2 girls in specific where everything's sort of in check other than like I guess, an espresso-shaped train ticket out of here. And they are Madison Beer and Maisie Peters. It seems like it's so almost happened for Madison so many times now. And I thought it could have happened this year with Make You Mine, but at least a Grammy nod is great for her. And Maisie's similar. She's got the fan base. She's got her own specific brand and image. She's got the personality. Elsewhere in the sort of pop-adjacent genres, there's country girls Dasha and Jessie Murph who've seen success this year. And it's a fantastic time for female rap, maybe the best ever in terms of commercial success. Obviously, Nicki, Cardi, Megan, and Doja are still releasing, but on top of that, we've got new girls like Latto, Glorilla, Flo Milli, JT, Sexy Red, who are all dominating not only the genre, but the charts. Similarly, I'm moving on to like people who it sort of look like it might happen, but maybe not now, is Ice Spice. Look, Ice Spice's stats are undeniable, and 2023 was a crazy year for her. She's got 4 top 10s, 4 platinum singles. Y2K, her debut album, peaked at number 18, 4 times Grammy nominations. She's got the Taylor stamp of approval by getting a whole feature on Karma. Also featured on the biggest movie of 2023 with the Barbie soundtrack. She's got her own word, munch, entering the pop culture dictionary. And she has a solid brand in pooping and shitting. I'm joking, her brand is just being so memeable and adaptable. But it seems that it may have sparked too quickly. I went to go see her on her Y2K tour. Stage presence was incredible, but the venue had to be downsized. I think the negative PR with Clear Trapper and Baby Storm coming for her, and the sort of silliness wearing off, and the lack of versatility in terms of like, I mean, we saw it with the Karma track, her style doesn't necessarily lean to every type of song and genre. Renee Rapp is an interesting one. An actress in Sex Lives of College Girls and Mean Girls the Musical, turned singer. Her album Snow Angel fared pretty well with the critics, and I think what helps her the most is that she's got a great fan base because she's so fun and personable in press interviews. I think the songs just haven't quite landed yet and aren't quite resonating, but again, there's time for that. If anyone's taught us that, it's Sabrina Carpenter. Victoria Monet is another interesting one. Platinum single with On My Mama. 4-time Grammy winner, including Best New Artist. Jaguar 2, a critic favorite with a Metacritic score of 87. And of course, she's Ariana Grande's go-to right-hand woman, being the woman behind songs like Seven Rings and Thank You Next. Victoria has the whole package. Like, as we've seen with On My Mama, the singles are there. She can sing, she can dance, she's got stage presence, she has a great creative vision. She's also been in the conversation for a long time with things like Ariana and Monopoly, and she has been releasing her own music since 2014. I just perhaps don't see that bigger pop breakthrough for her specifically. She's still going to be well accoladed. She's going to be extremely well respected. A cult staple rather than a commercial phenomenon. Okay, I have 5 girls here who I seriously considered for the final spot, and I'm going to go through them and explain why I didn't go for them. First being British singer-songwriter Ray. If you're from the UK, she's a people's princess. Number 1 with a huge hit, Escapism, followed up by a number 2 here in the UK with Prada. Her debut album, My 21st Century Blues, went number 2 in the UK charts and has a score of 80 on Metacritic. Oscar-winning Tears is looking like it's shaping up to be another hit for her. She broke the Brit Awards record for most nominations and most wins in one night. It's undeniable that she is going to be, similar to Victoria, a staple in the music industry, whether she has the commercial hits again or not. I just don't see, with the way that this genre specifically is moving, Ray maybe being at the front of it as much as some of these other girls. Moving up to the list, next on this level is Gracie Abrams, Don't Shoot Me. Her recently released album Secret of Us did 89k units in its first week and went to number 2. She got a number 1 in the UK. Her album has a Taylor Swift feature, which not a lot of girls can say. I know there's a lot of controversial takes on Gracie and people do not like her. I do not think I dislike her as much as other people. Hey, I actually think That's So True and I Love You, I'm Sorry are pretty good songs. The Taylor Blessing was obviously a huge leg up for her, especially with the type of music that Gracie releases. That middle pop ground relatability lane where she's not got this crazy stage presence and crazy vocals and unattainable songs if you wanted to get Smule karaoke up. She's your relatable pop star. I don't believe where she is at now is going to be her peak. I think she's only going up for the next few years. I just think the lasting impact and the stain she'll leave when we look back on the decade is the thing that's lacking for her. I just don't think she's as pivotal or monumental as some of these other girls we're discussing. Third on this list is Thames. Afrobeats has been such a major part of the global music scene so far this decade, and Thames has been at the front of that. First getting her breakout when she was sampled on the Drake song Wait For You, and has been a huge impact in Afrobeats becoming such a major part of the global music scene. She released a fantastic debut album with Born in the Wild and entered the Billboard Hot 100 with her track Free Mind. Thames is a force, and I have seen her live and she is phenomenal live. One of the best live artists I've seen, which is such a great skill to have in your wheelhouse, as we saw how much that helped people like Chappell Roan. And I have no doubt that her star is only going to shine brighter in the second half of this decade. Second on this list, and genuinely I think if we have this conversation this time next year, she will be in the conversation in the big league. Doechii. She's best known for her track What It Is, which peaked at 29 on the Billboard Hot 100. Her first major label big project, Alligator Bites Never Heals, came out this year, has a Metacritic score of 79. She's also scored 3 2025 Grammy nominations, including Best New Artist, and has become the first female artist to be nominated for Best Rap Album this decade. She supported Doja Cat on tour, she's had a SZA feature on a remix, and of course, Tyla, the Creator. He's just named her one of the best rappers alive and featured her on his new 2024 album. She came out and performed with him at Camp Flog Gnaw. Doechii just has this insatiable creativity that you cannot buy, you cannot learn. Already, we've seen so much versatility from her, able to do those commercial radio hits like What It Is, but she can also take it more edgy and rockier with Crazy, or she can do easy R&B with Persuasive, or old school hip-hop with Booty Drop, catchy wordplay on tracks like Nissan Oldtimer, or she can be a bit more quirky with her wordplay on Denial Is a River. She, to me, is the most versatile new artist out there right now. Mainstream attention is literally knocking on her door. I really think 2025 could be the year it clicks for her. Girl who came closest to this position, and I eventually didn't go for and went for someone else, was Miss Tate Mcrae. She's obviously huge. You Broke Me First has over 1 billion streams, but then her proper breakout came last year with Greedy, top 10 in the US, and became a global #1. Her album last year, Think Later, went #4 on the Billboard 200. She's great for that mass appeal. Her songs are catchy. They get in your head, which is great. But what sets her apart from just being someone who can release a catchy song is, of course, her dancing background. I love the Billboard Awards performance of her. That is so good. It's interesting to see she started off more as a Billie archetype, as that anti-pop girl with more moody mid-tempo songs like I Said You Broke Me First. And then after Greedy was a hit, she's morphed into that more Nelly Timberland sound and Britney stage presence. As of right now, it still just feels a little too much of a costume, and I don't actually think it's her fault. I think it's her label's fault. She obviously turned up to the VMAs in a dress that Britney wore to the VMAs before. I heard a rumor her team and stylist put her in the dress without actually telling her Britney wore it. I don't know if that's actually true or not. Get the picture of who Tate Mcrae is as an artist, but I don't get a clear enough picture of why Tate Mcrae is unique as an artist. In terms of Sabrina's and Chappell's and Charli's, she hasn't carved out a lane specific enough to her yet. And that's also okay because she's super young and she still has the time to do it. The numbers are there, and I do actually think her sort of middle ground, sexy 2000s pop girl, it works for her. She sells it to me. I just think that she needs a little more time working out who she is and her sound. Saying that though, Two Hands, oh my god. Her best song she's ever released. That slide sample was genius, and that seemed more of a fun for her. It's like taking inspiration from those things that she was trying to do, but not just being a direct carbon copy. I do think with time Tate can get there, but someone who I think has it currently right now, South African artist Tyla saw her first musical attempt through a self-released single called Getting Late. That buzz got her signed to Epic Records, where she released a single called To Last and one called Overdue, which ended up being on the soundtrack of Netflix's Blood and Water. But it wasn't until 2023 when things really started moving and she started to gain traction with the bop Been Thinking. Oh my god, this should have been her water breakthrough. That is so good. Followed up with her song Girl Next Door with Ira Starr, settled her into her own sort of lane of this, as she calls it, pop-piano, which is a mix of the genres of pop and amapiano. Ira Starr is definitely worth a mention too. She's done great things with her single Rush. But her breakthrough was, of course, I'm sure we can all say it as a class, Water. It came with a viral TikTok challenge with the Water Challenge, and the song gained legs so fast, it ended up going top 10 in the States, making her become the youngest ever and the first in 55 years South African artist to enter the Billboard Hot 100. The song landed her a Grammy win and the first ever recipient of the award of Best African Music Performance. She was beating out global stars like Burna Boy, and she didn't even have an album out yet. At the BET Awards, she won Best New and Best African Artist, and she has a VMA under her belt for Best Afrobeats Video. The success and peak of Water leaked into this year, and we saw her debut album Tyla released in March, scoring an 8 from Pitchfork, which is impressive for a pop album in this day and age. The album saw a fusion of Afrobeats with pop and that sort of light Cassie Aaliyah-esque R&B sound. The thing that I love most about Tyla is the way she fluctuates and bends genres to make her own distinct sound. She has that sort of amapiano production with the drums, and then has these playful lyrics and a sensual, sexy voice, which, you know, if she wanted to, she could belt out and sing you under the table, but she chooses not to. She also has these really distinct little, I guess what you would call Tyla-isms, like the way she rolls her R during the track Jump. She does this sort of taking inspirations from all these different genres and other big pop girls like Beyonce and Ree, but still is able to have an individual and distinct sound, which you can hear something and go, oh, that's Tyla. Every song on that album Smash, smash, smash. The music is most definitely there when it comes to Tyla, but what really sells her as an artist is who she is. She's cited Beyonce and Rihanna as influences, and it's clear to see, but as I mentioned, it's not in like a cosplay-y way. Every time she performs, she is so captivating, and her team clearly have a real creative vision down to the styling of her outfits, to the color grading of music videos, to the choreography. It all just feels so familiar, yet personable to her. When you find out that this is literally still her debut era, it's insane. She also has great branding with calling her fan tigers and that sort of tiger print becoming synonymous with her brand. She even was teasing a Stanley Cup tiger collaboration, which I will be buying. Also, when it comes to red carpet, she has a certain style which is so instantly recognizable, which I think people like Tate miss the mark on. There's no doubt that Tyla is obviously Y2K inspired, like a lot of these other girls are, but as I mentioned, she does it without feeling like it's painfully obvious homage. Other than the EMAs, which was maybe a near miss. It wasn't a total miss. But I really think what comes down to Tyla separating herself from these other girls and being what feels like a different kettle of fish is her effortlessness. Tyla is on stage, or when Tyla is in a music video, or even the way that she sings on the song, she oozes that 2000s professionalism that is, to me, lacking in the other three big players in a complimentary way. I think Sabrina, Charli, and Chappell are all a bit like pokey, which has worked for them and is what has seen them succeed. But Tyla makes up for that sort of slinky professional way that pop stars were in the 2000s, which is why, to me, she's the most obvious pick for the 4th spot on this Mount Rushmore, because it's what's missing. Everything just seems so innately her. And unlike the other big three girls this year, Tyla is only just in her 2nd major year in the industry. She's 22 years old, and to have this all figured out already is insane. We've seen that it takes ages for this to happen. She just recently released her deluxe version of her album, which again, the cover art, one of my favorite album covers of the year. She just gets it. And it also looks like a track from the deluxe version, Push to Start, is shaping up to be a hit in the new year. Finally, she's out there. She is working her butt off and is in front of you, whether you like it or not. She performed at the New York New Year's Eve party. She performed at the prelude to the Paris 2024 Olympics at the Foundation Louis Vuitton. She headlined the Victoria's Secret's comeback show. She's had a feature in Vogue. She's a Grammy and VMA winner. People look out for her on red carpets because she's been known to pull good outfits and iconic pieces, such as this iconic Tom Ford for Gucci dress for the CFDA. She has this personal brand that every time a fashion season rolls around, you will see at least one quote tweet during that, someone quoting it going, "We need to see Tyla on this." She's unstoppable to me, and I think she will be a huge force in the second half of the decade, which is why she takes up that final spot. And now we have it. Again, I say this every video, but this video was way longer than I intended it to be. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you subscribe. Again, let me know down below in the comments who your Mount Rushmore of new pop girls are, and stream the playlist, and I will see you soon for a new video.